The Clash of Kings. This is the second novel in the Game of Thrones series. Well, Song of Ice and Fire. Should probably give it its proper name. I finished reading this one a few days ago, actually, and I really enjoyed this one. It did a lot of things different than the first one. It kind of gives you more, I think, of a climax, a kind of scene at the end that I'm talk about later. And on top of that, though, I think this one's a little bit less structured than the previous one, but still enjoyable all the same. Before we get into the video, make sure to do the usual stuff of liking and subscribing, and leave a comment down below if this is one of your favourites of the series. So let's start off with talking about my general ideas of the book. So this one, like I said, is a little bit less structured, but has more of a kind of narrative drive to the plot, having something that is like working towards, you get what I mean there. I feel like this one I thought would take me a long time because it's like 900 pages, but it actually didn't take me that long because the weird way that these books are kind of put together. And by that I mean that because there's so many different points of view and quite a lot of these are separate from the others, they may like link in some ways, but quite a lot of them are kind of separate, could be their own story in a way. You're basically telling many stories at once and you're just flashing back in between all of these until you get to like the end where some of the plot points line up. Because obviously some, like for example, I won't talk too much about it, but Jon Snow's arc in this book kind of is very separate, whereas Tyrion, maybe Bran's a little bit, and also like Catelyn Stark. All of these are kind of linked together, but there are some that are very separate. But you can see these as their own kind of separate story, and the fact that you jump between all of them kind of keeps this book going at a reasonable pace that isn't too kind of slow and doesn't get like boring within the middle act. Okay, so I feel like the only way I can really talk about these books is to talk a little bit about spoilers now. So if you haven't read the book, go do that, then come back and watch this video. And yeah, let's get into this next part. Let's talk about the characters. One of my favourites in this book is Tyrion. The way he's written, with this kind of knowledge and the fact that he's like so clever but still being put at odds with the rest of the Lannisters, I think is very well done here. And like I said, I think he's one of my favourite viewpoints in this book. I've got a soft spot for Davos because he's introduced a couple of times and given his own viewpoints, but I don't know whether that's because I've watched the show and I really like the way he's portrayed in that. But Tyrion, very well done. One of the best characters in the series, and also kind of has a more, I'd say, I don't really know how to describe, like just a more prominent role in this book, taking up a lot of the page time. I think if we move across to Jon Snow, he has, like I said, got a very separate arc from the plot. He's out and gone beyond the wall with the Night's Watch and going to see what this what's going on with the wildlings and trying to look for his uncle. This one, like I said, is very separate, very different. I don't think it has a full conclusion yet. We don't really know. I think I started reading the book afterwards, and the bit at the beginning kind of sets up what is going to be happening. But this one, it's not as climactic as the final section of this book, which was the fight in Blackwater, where Stannis finally decides to go against King's Landing, try and get the throne. And that's one of the sections where Tyrion becomes one of my favourites because just the things he does here and how he's like tried to plot this all, and you kind of like understand kind of what he's going to do, and then when this all starts happening, you go from the viewpoint of like for example Davos, and you see all the stuff that starts to happen and just how like scared and how basically just how ruined they are because of these plans that Tyrion set up. We once again have Daenerys here, who I think takes a bit like a slower this book. Like she gets to this city and then meets these other people, and like let's talk about the dragons and stuff, and where she's trying to get help and she just can't because no one wants to give her like boats, and all the people that do want to marry her and like basically just like use her, and she's having none of it. But she does take a kind of backseat in this book, to be honest, because her plot doesn't really go very far. And then you've got Bran, who has a kind of plot in this one where he is back at Winterfell and he is learning about his new kind of found powers. And then you've got the invasion with Theon, who comes and tries to take Winterfell for the kind of second half of the book, and then loses it again to Lord Bolton, well, his kind of army. But then you have the kind of attack, and then how Bran and Rickon are seemed dead. I really like this. That's one of my favorite bits, just this bit with Winterfell with Bran, which I didn't think I would normally like Bran that much, because I end up just getting a bit bored of him, because he's just like so much younger and you don't really get a lot. But he's actually very good. I really like this bit. And then last but not least, you've got to talk about Arya. She has a very interesting plot in this book. I'd say, actually, I don't know whether I prefer her over Jon at the minute, but the stuff she does and her kind of attempt to survive here is really good. And her, like, I feel like it's weird because I feel like she's just moving as a character. So, whereas some people are just, like, for example, Sansa in this book is just, I don't think she does a lot, and she doesn't really have a lot to do. But because obviously you can't tell loads of people's story, otherwise you'll end up, like, book will be way too long. But I really like Arya in this book. I feel like she gets enough page time to make her character, like, worthwhile, and I'm excited to see where this goes in the next books. And my final thoughts for this: I think that it was very well done. The structuring was a little bit off, but part of that is just because some of the characters had to have less page time to allow for other characters to kind of shine in this one. Especially, like I said, with Tyrion, Arya, and kind of Jon. A bit of Bran, but I thought it was balanced quite well. So I'm going to give this one like a 4 out of 5 stars. I think this is one of the better ones I've read so far. Game of Thrones is, like, the initial book is iconic just because it sets the stakes very well and quite in a shocking way. Whereas this one manages to continue that premise forwards and push it beyond. And I really enjoyed this one. If you like this video, I'll leave a video up here for the review for the first one. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.